here it is, my most cautious movie of the year. I'll summarize the plot in totality so we're on the same page, then discuss it afterwards. Cool? Cool. Before I do, if you enjoy this video, then please like and subscribe to help build this kingdom. Superman 2025 opens with him getting clapped. It turns out this is actually the opening shot of the movie. Clark's been Superman for 3 years. He's the strongest metahuman on Earth, and just lost his first fight to someone called the Hammer of Baravia, named after the fictional nation that I'll get to in a moment. Clark calls Krypto to drag him into the Fortress of Solitude down here in Antarctica to recover. Yeah, he was punched from here to here. This is part of a larger problem that I'll get to later. Anyway, unbeknownst to them, they were followed by Luthor's cybernetic minion, the Engineer. Let me emphasize, this is going to get confusing real quick, so I'll just keep the summary short and concise, but there will be a lot of names thrown out, so bear with me. Superman recovers in the fortress, where he's comforted by an old video message by his Kryptonian parents, which is damaged beyond repair, but put a pin in that. Then he flies back to Metropolis to re-engage with the Hammer, but loses again. After beating him again, the Hammer flies to a beach not a mile away and enters a tent within an encampment owned by Luthor Corp. Man, thank God those news choppers weren't there, or other superheroes, or even curious bystanders with phones to see where he went. So the Hammer goes through one portal in this tent, which takes him into a pocket dimension, and then through another portal, which sends him to Luthor Corp. If this isn't a perfect encapsulation of this movie's plot, I don't know what is. Anyway, while Clark's distracted, Luthor, the Hammer, and Engineer head to the fortress, entering it despite not having any of Clark's DNA, wink, even though the Hammer's identity is concealed, wink, and they trash the place. The Superbots are less effective than Owen's stupid dinosaur force powers crap. Krypto is captured, and the Engineer hacks the main computer, downloading the damaged farewell message. Meanwhile, Clark visits Lois's apartment to celebrate their 3-month anniversary, because that's a celebration in today's day and age. He agrees to Lois interviewing him as Superman, and it doesn't go well. I get why people think this scene's dialogue is good, but for now, I'll keep it simple. It's terrible, and doesn't fill me with confidence as Superman basically bitches out and leaves the apartment. Yeah, he got pissed off that Lois didn't blindly agree with him as he exerted his power by stopping the invasion by Baravia by pinning their president to a cactus in the desert and threatening to hurt him. Yeah, there's a massive moral conundrum that just isn't explored in depth here. And the interview concludes with Clark whining about mean tweets. Again, I'll get to it. The next day, a kaiju, which grew from a small monster released the night prior, begins to attack Metropolis. Superman engages it, but doesn't try to kill it, while saving the people who refuse to flee. Then, the Justice Gang, comprised of Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl, arrive and kill the monster. In the aftermath, a broadcast with Lex Luthor reveals he has evidence that Superman is in fact here to conquer Earth. This is because they managed to somehow decode and repair the damaged message. Not a clue how he pulled that one off. Even with the Rosetta Stone, it took years to figure out how to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics beyond the emojis we didn't understand before. But hey, we're 20 minutes in, and this pace ain't gonna break its own neck. So, the complete message is one of the most infuriating alterations out there, because Superman was sent to conquer Earth by gathering a harem and rebuilding the Kryptonian race. Not gonna lie, almost walked out of the theater. In fact, sitting there in the stunned silence of the audience, I just blurted it out. Fuck you. They turned the Kryptonians into the Viltrumites. Really? Again, I'll get to it later. Anyhooser, the near entirety of Metropolis immediately turns on Superman faster than a politician does their constituents, and the movie makes sure you know this bastardization is genuine when 4 different characters all confirm its authenticity with 0 evidence. Understandably frustrated, Clark speeds off to the fortress, finding it in shambles before flying to Luthor Corp to confront Lex about Krypto's whereabouts. This is another scene in which Clark looks like a fool. I get being frustrated and angry after so much occurs in such a short time frame, but losing your cool and screaming like an impudent child does not a Superman make. As the public increasingly turns against him, Clark decides to turn himself over to the government to to get closer to Crypto, knowing Lex has him. After he's arrested, Clark's handed over to Luthor, who imprisons him in the pocket dimension with Metamorpho, who can replicate any material and forms kryptonite. So now Lex Luthor, the guy who wants to kill Superman, has him by the balls. Does he kill him? No, because the government wants information. I beg your finest of pardons? Yes, this is a good year. The tried and true 15-year aged convenience. Anyway, Luthor brings a civilian in who Superman knows, threatening to kill him for information using Russian roulette. Yes, because the game of chance makes sense as a countdown when the gun goes off, killing the dude. Yeah, I know Marines who are smarter than Lex, but let's just move on. In his absence, Lois requests the Justice Gang help her to find Superman, but Guy and Hawkgirl refuse. Mr. Terrific, on the other hand, agrees, and the two track down Superman's last known position, which is in the same Luthor Corp encampment on the beach that Hammer flew into before. Weird! After a brief fight, they hack into the portal and enter the pocket dimension, while none of Luthor's employees warn him about this intrusion. Meanwhile, Metamorpho agrees to help Superman if he saves his son Joey. However, to power him up requires a yellow star, which isn't present. So he says he can't create a sun, and then he just does! Yes, this is all as stupid as it sounds. So Clark saves Joey, frees Crypto, and fights off Luthor's men before they all return to our dimension. Mr. Terrific stays with the portal to close it, while Lois takes Clark back to the Kent's farm. It's at this point Jimmy Olsen's contact inside Luthor Corp, Luthor's current girlfriend Eve, has had enough of Lex's crap and sends a ton of selfies to Jimmy. Now, what does this matter? You see, Eve's selfies contain all of the incriminating evidence of Luthor's evil plans, such as his connection to Baravia, conversations with their president, and goal of killing Superman. You heard me correctly. Luthor's entire plan is foiled because he's too retarded to stop his girlfriend from photographing his plans. I challenge anyone to argue this movie is objectively good. Anyway, the next day, Clark has recovered and learns that Baravia is about to invade Jarnapur again. After Pa Kent reiterates the Mewtwo quote of life's decisions to Clark, he decides to return to Metropolis at the request of Mr. Terrific as the portal has become unstable and opens a black hole that begins consuming Metropolis. In the city, Hammer and Engineer attack Superman and Mr. Terrific, knocking out the latter. During the fight, it's revealed that Hammer is in fact a clone of Clark, Ultraman. Yeah, this universe already has near-perfect clones of Superman. I'll let you consider the ramifications of such potential. Anyway, Superman and Crypto defeat Ultraman because Lex controls him by yelling out attack commands like grid movements and viewing the fight through drones. Crypto destroys the drones, and Ultraman is defeated by Clark, who threw him into the black hole. Yeah, a superhero who cherishes life just cast his own clone into an event horizon. Yeah, cue the Snyder fans getting the last laugh after Zod's snapped neck. Anyway, Clark, Crypto, and Mr. Terrific enter Luthor Corp, shutting down the portal, closing the rift, saving the day, and parallel to this, Jimmy and Lois's report about Lex's corruption is aired, proving his conspiracy with Baravia and attempt to kill Superman. Meanwhile, the invasion of Jarnapur is stopped by Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Metamorpho. Hawkgirl then drops Baravia's president to his death, contradicting the entire point of that interview from so early in the movie. Then Clark and Lois kiss, and later Supergirl arrives to pick up Crypto after a weekend of partying on an alien planet. And that's where the movie ends. Alright, with that finished, let's get into what I have time to go over, so apologies for not getting into all of the details I want. Let's begin with Superman. From what I've heard, though I cannot confirm, so inform me below if this is true, but Corin Sweat was hired because he had to like being Superman. So he's more uplifting and happy instead of walking around like he's carrying a cross carved from a neutron star, so that's a plus. I don't mind the costume either. It isn't flattering because it's thicker than drywall, so it hides Corin Sweat's physique, but it's bright, defined, and I enjoy the New 52-inspired design. Now, my concern with the trailer was Clark's introduction resembling the Street Fighter II defeat screen, but as long as he got back up, I'd be fine with it. Thankfully, that's the case. Clark's shown to be a righteous force of good, prioritizing others during combat, even to his own detriment. However, as I'll go over, the writing isn't strong. Gunn claimed this was the most relatable Superman ever, and that's only true if your diet is comprised of mostly soy lattes from Starbucks. Again, crashing out from an interview he agreed to with his girlfriend, then storming out is the fastest way to dry her out like the Sahara and make us cringe. The whole he's new argument goes right out the window because he's been at this for 3 years, has a hot girlfriend, is the most powerful being on the planet, has almost as much praise sung about him as Jesus, but he cries because monkeys in another dimension started up #super shit? Fuck off. Next up is Luthor. He wants to kill Superman. Fair enough. But why such a convoluted plan when he already has the means to? I don't care for the excuse Luthor wouldn't defy the government, and if you make that argument, I got some waterfront property on the surface of Mercury to sell you. Luthor can clone Superman, has metamorpho under lock, key, and penalty of his son's death, and hasn't used them against Superman before? Hell, the engineer discovered the Fortress of Solitude, and Lex didn't send Ultraman to finish the job? I get the main characters have some level of plot armor, but their struggle must make sense within the bounds of their story. And you can write smart villains who still lose. So Luthor's willingness to kill those close to Clark, distract the world with a war, and open a black hole beneath Metropolis sets the standard so high it'd hit the second tower. Any restraint on Luthor's part is as artificial as the cast surviving Jurassic World Rebirth. And he's dumb enough to let his side piece photograph everything? That's like Osama bin Laden getting caught because he posted about his plans on MySpace. This is because the writing is mostly crap. First, the efficacy of the comedy is up to you. Personally, I laughed at one joke, which was more about Jimmy Olsen's reaction to something he's told, while the rest of the audience sounded off like it was their first Mel Brooks experience. So, your mileage will vary, but I'm more focused on the characters, and I think it's fair to say the interview scene will be the biggest source of contention as people debate the merits of Lois and Clark's arguments. Well, I'll have you know, as a professional stick-up-my-own-ass, I'd say the majority of that scene is terrible. It's the clash of ideals, in this case standing up for what is right and defending the weak, versus the overreach of power. And they blew it. Both should have been better prepared, knowing and working with each other. Lois makes a valid point. Superman shouldn't just force people into doing things he wants because that makes him a bully or villain in people's eyes, let alone the potential injustice that would come from that. On the flip side, in this fictional setting, while Lois is correct, the temptation of force is a slippery slope, Clark has the power and willingness to save those who ask. However, proposing the ideas isn't the issue of the writing. It's Superman never getting to make a choice as the film sides with his intervention without consequences, but also contradicts his stance. Clark saves others to his own detriment, but he stands idly by when Mr. Terrific kills the kaiju he tried to save. He wants to stop the Baravian invasion, but the Justice Gang, granted it's at Clark's request, does so anyway, even though the contention between he and Gardner shouldn't have seen that through. He wants to free those imprisoned in the pocket dimension, but doesn't bat an eye at killing his clone. Superman's robbed of the responsibility to make the choices himself and moves the plot along without self-reflection. This is the main reason the writing sucks, and it's so frustrating because of the constant give and take. Now, something else to address, because I know people are going to be curious about this. The film really isn't woke. I don't know why everyone in Hollywood has such a bad habit of opening their mouths at the 11th hour, but I would mostly chalk Gunn's remarks up about this movie being a story of immigration up to simply trying to twist my balls. I intended on watching the movie anyway, since that's my thing, so comments like this put me needlessly on guard. The only overt element besides besides race-swapping characters like Perry White, would be the thinly veiled war between Russia and Ukraine, or Israel and Palestine, depending on how you choose to perceive it. Moravia is a technological powerhouse of, ironically, nothing but white people against the most diverse nation in history, with literally nothing but pitchforks. Honestly, that's about as far as it goes. The elements aren't abusive, but they're also not necessarily absent either. And yet, ironically, Clark was sent to rule Earth and breed a whole new Kryptonian population with his own harem. Makes you wonder what Gunn's comments were actually about. I understand why many people find this movie to be okay and even entertaining. There are positive elements, as I mentioned, and the audience I was in laughed through the film and clapped at the end. However, the faults in the writing cannot be ignored, as the bloat is why the pacing doesn't allow you time to digest anything. The characters, dialogue, their ideals, contradictions, contrivances, convenience, and retarded plans are a confused and disappointing mess. And that's not including the numerous continuity errors, problems with the world building, such as the broken power scale of what technologies can be achieved, nor what this means for the chaos to come. So no, Superman 2025 sucks, and I'd argue it's probably no better than most of the crap Marvel spewed out from Captain Marvel and Black Panther and onward. And it's a damn shame, because I love how dressed up this cake is. But it's too bad it tastes like shit. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next video.